This video continues on the theme of landscapes, but this time landscapes with figures. The addition of figures adds life and a focal point to a painting. In addition to landscapes, you can add seascapes and townscapes, subjects that in real life are often teeming with figures. In 1980, we made a second voyage from England to the Caribbean, this time aboard a boat of our own design and build. We made our landfall on the island of Barbados. For 3 years, my work as an artist had been put on hold, and now I was catching up on lost time. There is only one way to become proficient at adding figures to a landscape, and that is with practice. And the best way to practice drawing figures is not by copying photographs or following textbook examples, but by going out and making hundreds of sketches from life. And for that, I had subjects galore on Bridgetown's crowded beaches. I began with countless rapid thumbnail pencil drawings before moving on to scores of watercolors. My figures were constantly on the move, as is the case in real life. You can't expect a crowd to stay still, and my task was to capture them between one fleeting moment and the next. For over 30 years, an Englishman with a sketch bag slung over his shoulder was a familiar sight in the towns and villages throughout the Caribbean. My books, Virgin Island Sketches and Caribbean Sketches, contain hundreds of pen and ink drawings that I made on those journeys. They were all taken from life, and they capture the essence of life as it was lived in the islands. The scenes are depicted, the markets, farming the land, and bathing in the rivers, were soon to change forever. In my sketches and paintings, figures predominate, and they even found their way onto the postage stamps that I designed for the islands. You cannot expect figures in real life to stay still, especially when milling around the stalls in a marketplace or when crowds follow the carnival. For these subjects, I had to develop a rapid way of working. It is best to begin by sketching people in waiting rooms or doing repetitive tasks. Even children playing on the beach repeat their motions, and these you can capture by working consecutively on a number of drawings of the same subject and switching from one to the other as opportunity presents itself. Life class poses are of little help in capturing the suggestion of figures in motions. That is, unless the model keeps moving from one position to the next. For my life class students, I demonstrate how to make a 5-second sketch. That being, a 5-second sketch that has taken me 50 years to master. And remember, figures should fall naturally onto a landscape. The brush strokes from which they are composed must relate to the painting as a whole. Doodling is good practice for painting figures. Within random washes, figures suggest themselves in the way that ever-changing images can be seen in cloud patterns. The painter Eugene Borda made hundreds of paintings of figures on beaches, and James Whistler was a master at making a suggestion of figures in his landscapes. When you look at Auguste Regnar's figures in detail, the freedom of his technique becomes apparent. Felix Topolsky's speed of execution can be seen in this rare film clip of the artist sketching on the pavements of France. What follows is a brief video of me sketching at the local market. On a day when I expected to find the market alive with vendors and shoppers, all was quiet. There were more people behind the camera watching me paint than there were people in front of me for me to paint. There was cursing from a group of spectators when a large lady stood right behind me and blocked their view. I carried on oblivious to the skirmish, but the cameraman wisely took cover. But these are the trials and tribulations of working from life. There is no way that these happenings can be experienced in the safe zone of copying from photographs. When working from life, there is no knowing what may happen. You can see that my hand impatiently dithers for the want of a subject, and when one comes into view, my eye follows and memorizes my find in a matter of seconds. Speed is of the essence. The secret is to keep your pencil moving while your eye searches for the next unsuspecting subject. Eventually your presence becomes unnoticed and people go about their business as usual. But sometimes the familiarization process can take days. This was the case years ago when I made scores of sketches of the islanders washing and bathing in the rivers of Grenada and Dominica. Drawing a pose model in a life class is far removed from life as it is lived in reality. Against all odds, I did manage 3 sketches. Colouring the first sketch with pastel was a mistake. The second sketch is better. And for the last sketch, I had limbered up and relaxed. While shade is good for the artist, the sharp contrast between shadow and sunlight makes it difficult for the camera to capture the scene and my sketch in the same frame. This demonstration overcomes the problem by focusing on the painting alone. I am making the initial sketch with a stick of charcoal. By merely suggesting the group of figures, the subsequent watercolor washes are free from restraint. For my way of working, the smoother the paper, the better. I find the rough texture of watercolor papers distracting. Although this paper measures only 8 inches by 5, the brush I'm using is a number 12 sable. Anything smaller would hamper my style. I'm not into painting itsy-bitsy cute watercolors. I don't wet my paper beforehand. The washes do that as they are applied, sometimes merging, sometimes creating a sharp division between the white of the paper and the adjoining color. I never use masking fluid. The secret of adding figures to a painting is to leave room for the viewer to enter into the creative process and reinvent the figures to their own liking. A large watercolor that I had made of the marketplace in Grenada was cluttered with market stalls and figures. It was purchased by a visiting family from the States. They afterwards wrote to say how much they enjoyed the painting and how they especially liked the brown dog in the right-hand corner. It was just like their dog at home. They enclosed a photograph of the painting and pointed out the dog. In truth, I had not painted a dog. It was the runs from one of my washes that enabled them to create a dog of their own. A brush loaded with colour allows washes the freedom to run amok, and in doing so, they add their own unique contribution to the painting. I do much of my painting without pencils, paints, and paper, and that is by observing figures wherever I find them. In my mind's eye, I can recall the features and stance of people that I saw in passing 50 years ago, and they remain at my beck and call whenever I need them. Those who have followed this demonstration to its end may find themselves repeating the words of one onlooker to another. As I was adding figures to one of my best townscapes, he shook his head and said, "He's made a mess of that."